Welcome to the Passive Income Podcast live real estate edition with the most beautiful Dr. Farah Sutton and Tom Brickman, the frugal gay. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and let's have a conversation about real estate. And I know, Tom, you have a lot of properties in Texas and Ohio, and Farah, you're a real estate agent in Arizona. So let's just dive in and see where the conversation takes us.
That sounds good. Happy to be here again.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, obviously, thank you guys so much for coming on. Tom, what are you up to now? 24 doors? Is it 24?
I did a partnership separation. So I'm actually at 22, but on Friday I'll be at 23.
Congratulations.
So one more, and I feel like I'm at a really good point where taking on more is I'm good where I'm at. The one that I'm taking on Friday was like an off market that just fell into my lap, and they just spent a ton of money, and it already has a tenant, and they just don't want to be a landlord anymore after going through a really yucky eviction on the past tenant. And I'm like, I can take that problem off your hands. So that's how this one that's coming up on Friday fell into my lap.
Cool.
Interesting. And then from Farah, from the real estate agent perspective, you have like listings right now. How are things going, like with interest rates and everything that's going on in the markets? Like how is that? What does that picture snapshot look like right now?
So I have a couple listings right now, and I will say, when the news hits that mortgage rates have ticked down a little bit, I'm seeing more showing requests. So buyer interest is there. Everyone's kind of like sitting, hoping that interest rates go down a little bit. And, when it does go down a little bit, I think it went from to 6.9, just below 7 is what I was seeing. Like now I'm getting a lot more showing requests and like the buyer outlook. I mean, if this would have happened on a Thursday or Friday, this weekend would have been busy, but it's a Wednesday, so we shall see.
Last time it dropped to those, I'm seeing those, like the sales from those when it fell, like, yeah, people are ready and waiting. They are in the wings, just waiting for that rate to drop a little bit. And I think that's also, Dave, why I say I'm good at 23, because if and when those rates do drop, I don't want to be there trying to buy. Like I'll be there ready to sell. Yeah. But on the buyer's side, I actually, for me, for the last year, I've been more comfortable buying right now than I even was in 2021, just because I don't want to compete with 10 people. And when I was competing with 10 people in 2021, I overpaid and got emotional and missed an inspection and inherited problems. So I'd rather, I know that sounds crazy that I'm okay with the higher rates, but I can still make the numbers work on it. And that's why I'm buying the one. But that's my take on higher rates right now.
And I think that's a good point, though. Like the numbers are still working for you, even in this rate environment. I see sometimes agents are like, "Oh, it's okay. You can refinance later on." And I always advise people, like, make sure it works today, right? It's not like it's tight and we can like squeak and hold on for 12 months, but it's a struggle. Like, make sure it's comfortable now.
100%. Because what if they don't fall? What if they keep going up? I don't want to be holding on for 12 months and then 14 months later, you're like, I can't do this anymore. And then, so yeah, I totally agree with that.
Exactly.
So that's actually kind of interesting. Obviously, everyone knows I'm in Canada. Both of you are in the US. And here in Canada, the equal to the Fed would be called the Bank of Canada, BOC, Bank of Canada. And they have been holding. They have not raised or cut interest rates now in, I don't know, several months. And I've seen some kind of tweets going around about the Fed hopefully maybe planning to cut rates at some point in the next, say, 3 to 4 months or something. And again, this kind of ties into that picture of those like the interest rates, right? Obviously, like you get into real estate, you have to keep your eye on the interest rates to see what's happening. And so I guess sort of my thought or comment there is, and again, kind of going back to me being in Canada, Canada does really follow what the US does. Maybe right now we're a little bit in a different pattern because we're holding where the U.S. is kind of like, is the Fed holding right now, or are they going to cut? What's going to happen? What do you think? What are your thoughts on interest rates right now?
I think that they're going to hold. Like, I
Yeah.
just don't know that we're going to see a huge drop like they were saying at the beginning of the year, just because when stuff is hitting the market and it is halfway affordable, there are still, I'm seeing stuff in Ohio going 10, 20, 50,000 over asking, which was never the case. And all of a sudden it is. So I think when rates do drop, if they drop, it's just going to be more chaotic than it already is.
Oh, yeah.
So my anticipation right now is anything like the one that I'm buying Friday. I anticipate that rate set, and I've worked all my numbers off of that. And if it drops, that's great, and I will refinance, but I'm not banking on that right now.
Yeah. I mean, at the beginning of this year and, late last year, everyone's like, oh, they're going to start cutting by Q4, right? And inflation numbers aren't where they thought they would be. I mean, it's a stickier situation than I think people initially thought. And if they were to cut rates, prices would just go crazy for the housing market, at least in Arizona. I mean, I know so many people that like are hoping and are, waiting for that. And, realistically, the inventory for the MLS, it's a little bit dated, but is like 2.8 months of inventory like right now. So there's still not a lot, right? So if things are priced well, they're still moving within, I mean, it's not, 10 days like before, right? With a cash offer, but I mean, it's still fairly quick.
For sure. Dave, what are you
Just
seeing
circle back there.
in Canada?
Sorry, go ahead, Tom.
What are you seeing around you?
I think that was to you, Farah.
No, it was to you.
Canada.
Sorry, was it?
Around you? Yeah.
Well, yeah, real estate here, obviously in Canada, everybody eyes the Toronto and Vancouver market, and everybody says, oh, everything is so expensive in Toronto and Vancouver. And they're right, it is. It's ridiculously expensive in those big cities. And, the other big cities, Montreal, Calgary, Ottawa, they're not far behind either. But you can still find, if you're willing to live way far off the grid, shout out to Dividend Hero, get rich and get off the grid, right? Like, you can find a nice little place for, 200 grand somewhere on a lake in northern Saskatchewan, right? But, do you want to live in northern Saskatchewan? That's sort of the thing, right?
That's what I shared. I shared a $250,000 listing from Toledo, Ohio yesterday, and it just drew in lots of angry trolls and then a lot of debate. And the debate was, who wants to live in Toledo, Ohio? Now, let me just tell you a couple of stats. Toledo has 200,000 people. Toledo has an airport. It's 45 minutes from Detroit. Toledo has a lot going for it, and I'm not here to plug Toledo, but that was the debate under it, and it went absolutely crazy because people are like, yeah, but it's in Toledo. I get that, but if I were in a situation where my entry-level house is 800,000 to 100,000, maybe it makes more sense to start in a less expensive market and work your way up. And this is something that a lot of people don't really want to do, but that's what I've been doing since I was 21. Like, I wanted to be in the house that I'm in right now when I was 21, but I started in a $34,000 condo because that's what I could afford when I moved to Texas, and everything was expensive. And I tried to buy a house, and there were 12 investors bidding against me. So my realtor's like, everyone's ignoring condos. Just start with a condo so you can get your foot in the door and work your way up. And I think, Dave, that's why I was asking about Canada, because I know you're not by one of the major hubs. So there is still some affordable options. It's just they're outside the major cities. They're outside the major. And you know what? I don't even consider Toledo like a small town, because it's 45 minutes away from the airport. Like, when I'm in Dallas, I still drive 45 minutes to the airport, even though it's in Dallas. So I don't look at Toledo as this tiny town and there's nothing to do and there's 2 restaurants and 1 Walmart and that's it. So I think that's something that I try and focus in on when I'm talking to people about investing is maybe let's think outside the box and stop looking at these brand new build $800,000 townhouses and let's look at this.
It's all about like
I
managing.
just want to give a quick shout out here to Brandon, who Brandon lives near me. We have met in person at a Tim Hortons, of course, at a Tim Hortons, right? We're Canadian.
Toledo has Tim
it's
Hortons.
expensive along the 401 corridor between Montreal and Toronto, and he's right. I'm right off the 401 where I am. So, I mean, like my house, it's technically it's a 4-bedroom, but upstairs it's 1.5 stories, right, plus a basement. So upstairs there's just 2 rooms. I almost never go up there. I go up there to like change the mouse traps, and that's about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then my main floor is 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, a living room, and I have a nice garage outside. And you know, it's a $450 to maybe $500,000 Canadian dollars. So like sort of, you know, just kind of, I guess, put that in perspective, right?
Farah, you were saying something.
Yeah, no, I was wanting to talk more about Ohio and like Toledo. So you mentioned briefly that that, you know, there were multiple offers and like you're seeing in Ohio now. Are you seeing that even in Toledo? And you know, part of this I don't know if you saw the post, I have a soon to be 18-year-old who's already been saving up and looking for, she's got a goal to do her first real estate purchase at 18. And, you know, again,
that's your younger sister, right?
And again, like, you know, obviously she would love to do Arizona. I would love for her to do Arizona because it's close and convenient. But realistically, like where she's at, that it's going to be outside. And so she has looked at, you know, you see all over talking about Ohio and the properties you can get there. So I just kind of wanted to know, you know, what your thoughts are on what's the minimal amount someone needs to start investing in that market.
So if you're going towards Ohio, I encourage people 25,000, and it's because I try and encourage them to go towards the small multifamily, like a duplex, because you can get a solid duplex for like 90 to 120, and in that range, you're going to get a great down payment, and you're going to get, hopefully they're each 2-bedroom, 1 bath, and then you're getting, you know, 800, 900 from each unit, and that's kind of when I talk to people, I'm like, you got to get it up to 25, and because the lender is going to be looking for that. Even the local lenders, they're going to be looking for 20 to 25% down. And I do see a lot of people enter Toledo and then exit because they bought something cheap, because there is cheaper options, but they don't understand that nobody wants to live in that neighborhood and nobody wants to do work in that neighborhood. So you might as well save up the extra money to get to where somebody actually wants to live and rent and do that versus just buying something cheap. So I get those DMs too, where people are like, I bought a 4-plex and I'm losing money every month because of this, this, and this. And I'm like, and as soon as they give me the address, I'm like, dude, sell that, get out. Like, I don't even, like, I'm not even driving over there to collect rent. Why are you doing that? And that's something that I feel like needs to be stressed to people when they are starting. I bought my first duplex at 21 while I was in college, and I was an idiot and didn't know what I was doing. And thankfully my realtor's like, you need to buy over here. Stop looking at these. Yes, they're prettier, but this is where people want to live. And I'm like, no, it's too far. And my grandma came out and like, I showed her 3, and one of them was the one that I really wanted. And then 2 were like, just to show them like a something to potentially just show them another comp. And I ended up with one of the comps because grandma's like, this is the right spot. This is where people want to live. And it's one of the most profitable in my portfolio now. So grandma was right 20 years later. But people don't understand that. They are attracted to these cheap prices and they're like, oh, 45,000, I can buy this cash and do this. And the reality of that $45,000 duplex or whatever it is that it comes with a lot of issues. And I would rather pay more and get where somebody wants to actually live than take on a cheap problem. And I have taken on cheap problems and I've regretted it before. Like it's one of those. Now there is one that I bought in a rough neighborhood 3 years ago, but the city is spending a ton of money there right now. So I can already see it turning.
Mm-hmm.
And when I put it up for rent, it was like 20 people showed up to look at it. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? This is a neighborhood that everyone stayed away from. So I think neighborhoods change, but you don't want to go in too soon. Or if you don't know that there's change in the pipeline, and buy something, because that's where people will enter the market and exit 6 months later because they've just lost money. And I hate seeing that for young investors that are ready to start.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, due diligence is important, and it's always tough when you don't know that market. It's always, if you can go see and tour in person. In Arizona, kind of those ones you're talking about where you avoid those duplexes are in the 400,000s starting out, and so that's why it's like she would love to be close and local, but realistically, if you're starting out, it's just more expensive and harder, higher barrier to entry.
I don't know if you see this a lot, Farah, but I had and Dave, I'm not trying to monopolize. I'm just telling stories that clients have told me, or DMs that I get a lot, because that's a lot of, like, I think there's like 14 DMs from today that I have. Like, I'll go through once a day and just respond to DMs. And some of the stories that I get in these DMs, it's like mind blowing. But one thing that I had was and I don't know if I've shared this story with you when I chatted with you last time, Dave, but I had a client who bought a property. He wanted to go into Detroit, and this was a property right outside of Detroit. He bought this property for $92,000. He owned it for 14 months, and then he's like, all right, I haven't collected anything on this yet. I need to hire you, and we need to talk about what I should do. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm flying into Toledo, and when I fly into Toledo, I go into Detroit anyway. I'm like, do you want me to go look at the house? He's like, that's amazing. I've never even seen it, and I've been paying for it for 14 months. Yeah. So I go to the house. I get off the plane, get my rental car, go to the house, and I'm seeing like 87 red flags from just stepping foot in. Like, there's like multiple notices from the city on the front door that have been taped there for multiple weeks. And this property management was not doing what they were supposed to be doing. So ultimately what I did was, I'm like, all right, it's time to just cut your losses. Let's sell this. Let's get out. And we got it to where it got a certificate of occupancy. So when the person actually bought it, they could move a tenant in, they could do it. And we went down the road, and we ended up buying him a duplex down the road. But it was one of those that he just jumped in thinking, okay, I want to buy this. And then in reality, he didn't have a good team. And that's the other thing that I try and stress to people is, it's great if you can find a deal, but you got to have someone who's going to be there to fix this and collect the rent and do this. And that's the other thing that I try and stress to people is, even though you don't have the money right now, you can start building a team or contacts or building a list. And I've taken a lot of those calls where people are like, all right, who do you use for roofing? Who do you do for this? And being a landlord for as many years, I don't refer out everyone, but I do have like the best plumber that has been working with me for 20 years that I do referrals on all the time, because that's, who hasn't had a broken pipe up in Ohio that's frozen. I know you're not getting that. You're probably getting that in Canada, but you're not getting that in Arizona.
In Arizona. No, but that makes sense. I mean, and we see, having that team in place is so important. Literally, like, it's one of the big takeaways too, I think.
Okay, I have a few things here. I've got a lot of thoughts, actually.
Yeah.
First, I want to put this back on you, Tom. I know you take so much hate on Twitter, and I feel so bad for you when I see it, because I'm like, you're getting called like a slumlord, and you're posting these pictures of before and after of like this hoarder house that I turned into this like amazing property. Yeah. And I know some of it's got to kind of weigh on you a little bit, but at the same time, you probably like water off a duck's back, just let it slide. But I guess maybe how do you deal with that a little bit? Because like I said, I've messaged you back so many times, whether it's in DMs or on one of your tweets saying, Tom, this is amazing. Like, you've taken this hoarder house or whatever crack house and something so run down and so like derelict. And then the after picture is like this amazing brand new place for someone to live. And it's like, why are you getting this hate? You're doing God's work, buddy. Right?
So here's where I'm at with it. And I've learned this. I loved Twitter for the first 10,000 followers, and I had a really great crew and really supportive. And just as the number has gone up, so has the haters. So here's my thoughts on the slumlord comments that I get, which are almost every day.
And it's so undeserved because, like I said, you turn these hoarder houses and crack houses into like amazing units, right?
As long as it's not my 22 tenants that are commenting under there, I don't care because they're not paying me my rent.
That is absolutely amazing point, and that's great. I love that.
There's 22 people that are paying me rent every month. I've had it 100% occupied. I haven't had it 100% occupied in a very long time. So April was my first month. May was my second month. Those 22 people are really all I care about because they're the ones that are paying my bills. So you can say whatever you want to say, but the reality is I bend over backwards. Right before this, I had a tenant that drove over a clean out and broke their sewer line. And I rushed because there was no working sewer in the house. And I just zelled the repair to get it done right now before I jumped on here. And yes, I will try and bill it back to them. But it was important to me this morning that they have plumbing before they get home from work today because they're paying me rent. So that was my top priority. And it was a scramble to get it fixed and get the yard dug up. And yes, they were the ones that did it and they admitted it. But that's my priority.
You need to be able to flush your toilet and run your sink, right?
Exactly. And it's all good now. And I've zelled the cash over and it's done and it's fixed and they have working plumbing again. And they will not be driving their truck on top of that ever again because I already am like, why? But when I do get the negativity, there's two things. One, they're not paying the rent. And two, I've learned to pull back a lot because when I was building up that first 10,000, I would share everything. And now yesterday is a perfect example. I shared my shopping cart at Aldi and people were like, why are you buying Klondike bars? What's wrong with you? You're an idiot. And the reality is, and I responded to one person and I said this because they're like, you have bottled water in there. I'm like, well, first of all, we buy 1 or 2 cases of bottled water a year. And whenever we have someone deliver something at the house, we always offer a bottle of water. And I ran out on Monday, so I restocked yesterday. And I keep a case for that reason. And 2, life is short. And I'm going to eat a freaking Klondike bar or cookies at the end of the day if I want to. And that's up to me. So let me be. There's no debate on why are you eating a Klondike bar. And then I muted the post. And I think that's something that people don't realize. I will mute certain accounts. I've stopped blocking unless they're like, I hope you die. And then I mute because I don't need that mental anguish and I'll ignore it. And I muted the one about the $250,000 house in Toledo. And I went back to today and it had like 358,000 impressions. I'm like, oh my gosh, this thing blew up overnight. But I didn't have it in me to go through and read all the comments because all the comments are people that don't live in Toledo. It's just people on the coast saying, well, that's 800,000 here. That's, I can't do that.
Yeah, because from what I've seen from your posts, like a $250,000 or $300,000 house in Toledo would probably be like a really, really nice house. Because you've posted a lot of pictures saying here's a $50,000 or $80,000 house in Toledo, right?
Yeah, I love my short-term rental was 84,000, and it's like a little mansion, and I love it. I put money into it because I'm always repairing and maintaining it. It's 117 years old. But I love that house, and that could not be replicated in Texas or on the coast. It's just from that era, and it has a lot of unique features. So you got to block out the negativity and be very. Looking back on it, I should have taken those Klondike bars out of the cart before I took the picture, because I knew that someone was going to chastise me for it. But I don't really care because I'm going to eat the damn Klondike bars anyway.
Yeah. Before we Farah back into the conversation, I do need to know what would you do for a Klondike bar?
I remember that. I'm old enough to, and I remember that's actually why I buy them. My grandma used to give them. That was a really big deal to get a Klondike at the end of the day from grandma. So that's just my little walk down memory lane. And I'll tell you what, those Klondike bars taste exactly the same as they do 30 years ago when grandma was handing them to me. So that's my treat.
Sounds like your grandma has been very influential in your life.
Both my grandmas were very, for sure.
That's awesome. That's amazing.
One was a realtor. That's how she was a realtor, and My grandpa was a police officer, and she's like, the rule was if she wanted to spend the money and she wanted to do an addition or do a remodel or do this, she had to make her money to do it. And that was just kind of her upbringing. And she would go sell enough. She would go sell enough houses to do an addition or a remodel of the kitchen, and that was how they grew up.
That's awesome. It's amazing.
Yeah. I want to bring Farah back into the conversation here. I also have seen a lot of things, not so much today or in the last week, but over the last few months on Twitter, real estate agents making whatever commission percentage they make, and people saying real estate agents shouldn't make that much. And I'm sitting there going, real estate agents should make what they make. Like, I'm never going to sell a house without a real estate agent. I just don't know the paperwork. I don't know what needs to get sent to the lawyer, what needs to get sent to the bank. And I'm sure you've seen a lot of those tweets too over the last month or 2 or 3 months of people saying real estate agents shouldn't be making 3-4% or whatever the commission is, right? So I guess just jump in there. What are your thoughts?
The commission is negotiable. You can negotiate the commission. And there's options. If you're selling a house, there's fixed fee realtors. Like, that's always an option. If you go the fixed fee route, like, sometimes you're foregoing some services as part of that. There's just with anything, I think there's a lot of hate, but I mean, it is negotiable. I have a lot of clients.
So much hate on Twitter, really. Like, Twitter's always been like that.
I mean, I could post a floor plan, and something as innocuous as a floor plan, and it's like
I've seen some of your floor plans, and
that
one I looked at, I'm like, this looks great, and then I read the comments, and I'm like, everybody was hating on it.
Stop reading those
comments.
So
I'm not reply to this because now people are going to hate on me if I just reply to this comment or this.
But I do think with the commissions, with everything that's changing in the MLS and like the settlement, I am a little concerned for buyers, especially first-time buyers, low-income buyers, people that are not necessarily sophisticated buyers. Some of these exclusive contracts that they're going to have with buyer brokers, they might get stuck in a year. They might get stuck in, even if it's not that realtor that showed them the house. I think there is going to be some issues with that. And obviously that's not every realtor, but I am concerned that some people will take advantage of this contract. And, you're going to find a lot of first-time home buyers and then just less sophisticated buyers that are going to be stuck kind of in that situation. But buyer broker agreements are in there. I've seen some of the red line options that they're talking about changing for Arizona. I think normalizing a buyer broker agreement and having it standard across the board is going to be better practice, right? But I do have some concerns about that. Also, I've had some sales, first-time home buyers, actually, and they were the first one in their families to ever own a home. And they came to the closing table, I think they were like $1,500 short, right around there, right? And so we had to delay closing a couple of days because they ended up having to get a gift, and the money had to be seasoned and everything through mortgage to get that over the hump. Now you have to throw in a commission, even if it is, a flat rate. Although I don't foresee like I know I would never do a flat rate on the buyer side because that's just a lot more work, maybe an hourly kind of per showing. But even if it was on the lower end of fees, those buyers wouldn't have been able to do that. Like, just from their family situation, that gift money wouldn't have been able to do that. And so they would have had to back out, and we would have been trying to renegotiate to get their earnest money back in that situation. So I am a little concerned with that. I think a lot of sellers are still going to probably offer something just because they see some advantages to that. I have had some buyers, I would classify them a little bit more sophisticated. When I have done buyer broker agreements, they're like, hey, if it's less than this and I would have to pay you, don't even show me the house. And I always make sure I have that in writing, and then I just exclude those from the list, right? So it's just a little bit more work in that sense, but it'll be interesting to see this summer how that plays out a little bit more. I know I'm seeing on Twitter, people are posting in the MLS, those sellers that are offering 0% for the buyer's agent.
I haven't seen that quite yet, but I agree with everything you're saying, and I have bought and sold both ways over the last 20 years, where I've negotiated and I've done a flat rate. And even last summer, so I did two of a flip and another one, I sold them by owner, but I still paid a 2.5-3% commission on the buyer side. And I can tell you, just from handling those two transactions, those are my two most recent where I've sold, I could tell the one buyer's agent was very green and very new and did not know what they were doing. And then the second sale, you could tell the agent knew and like was so on the ball with everything, and everything was signed and everything was perfect for closing. So I think that you hit the nail on the head. It's negotiable. And I've negotiated 3%, 2.5%, 5%. Ohio was always 7% on the first 100,000. And I think that's, but as commissions raise, I do want to, because I just saw this yesterday and I loved it. One thing that I think people are overlooking is that there are, like, Toledo just announced this, they have a first-time home buyers program, and they are doing, like, even if you show up for it, like, you get a $500 credit for a realtor or whatever it is. And I think that people overlook those freebies that you can get. And they don't want to be excluded because they're using a first-time home buyer's credit or whatever. But I think that those are what's going to be able to push those lower-end buyers who are just starting out and super strapped. Hey, you have to take advantage of this if you're going to get your foot in the door. And I think people, one, are afraid of that. But I'm telling you what, if I were a first-time home buyer, I'm going to go sit at this class for 2 hours because they're going to give me $500 credit. Why not? So and then the great thing about that is they cover all the fees and what it costs to be a homeowner. And I can tell you from buying all these properties over the years, there's a lot of people that don't understand what it goes into owning a home. I buy distressed properties all the time, and there are times that furnace breaks or this breaks or the roof is leaking. It's expensive. It's a commitment, and I love that they're incentivizing learning about how to be a homeowner and helping those that are, because in Toledo, what we run into a lot is lenders won't loan up below $75,000. And when you have a $50,000 house, that's a great first-time home. They could get in. Their payment's going to be $600-700. That's what they're paying in rent anyway. But it's hard finding that lender. And there are two lenders now that do below $75,000. They're local credit unions. But that's another barrier of entry, which I know sounds crazy in today's world, that you're struggling to find someone who will loan you less than $75,000. But in some of the secondary markets like Toledo or Youngstown, that's very common to find a great little house for $60,000, for instance.
That's great. Yeah.
So
I mean, those programs are great. I mean, 2 hours, $500, $250 an hour. I mean, that seems like a no-brainer to me. But it's always shocking some people's mindset of like, oh, I don't need to do that. But it's always important when you can. And having a good realtor or having family, friends, anyone to be like, hey, these opportunities are out here, and just, publicizing those more. It's always great.
You could like, realtors can realtors make or break the deal. And I can tell you that agent who was very seasoned made that deal go through, because I was ready to pull the plug, and she finessed until we got it over the finish line. And then the other one, when I was selling, was just so green that I could have been like, all right, we're not doing the deal. And he'd be like, all right, I'll send over the paper. Like, it was just one of those, they're very, very, they don't care either way. So I love getting those that are I've taken on new agents before. I've had seasoned agents, and what I find a lot is I'm educating the new ones, and I'm like, no, we can't do this, or yes, we can do that. But that's okay, because that's how they're going to get their experience, trial and error. And stuff is always evolving and changing. And last week, I had written an offer on an on-market property, and the agent that wrote it up for me, he's like, I'm sending everything over, but you need to sign this extra one because you have to pay $150 technology fee if they accept it. And I'm like, whatever, it's fine, just send it over. But that's something, they're always coming up. It's a shifting. Yeah. There's shift constantly.
Did you see
in real estate?
Yeah. Did you see the new wholesaler? I think it was South Carolina, the wholesaler laws.
I love it. And I'm going to tell you, I've bought some wholesale deals, but I went under contract with a wholesaler back in January for these properties. Dave, is this okay that I'm telling all these stories?
Of
You're
course,
sitting here
yeah,
like
that's why we're
like shut up, Frugal. So I went under contract for this. It was a duplex up in Ohio, and it was the contract was, I was buying the contract from him. It was 29,000, and what it was he got 4,000 at closing, and 26,000 went to the original contract. And did some digging and found some issues, and then found that this thing was about to go on the city's teardown list, and I wanted to make sure if I'm buying it, the city's not there like the next day knocking it over. It wasn't on the demolition list. It wasn't going to happen immediately. But the wholesaler went back and he went to the seller who I had no contact with, and he's like, hey, this is about to be demolished, this, and he renegotiated with her and he got her down to 20,000, and then he wanted me to sign a new agreement, so he's getting 10,000 now instead of 4,000. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to sign that. So long story short, and I realize I'm still paying the same amount. It was just that you just used what I dug up to make yourself 6,000, and I'm not okay with that. Yeah. It's been stuck ever since, and I believe it is on the demolition list. And I really think that there was no seller. That's my true theory, because the title company couldn't get a hold of her. The person who was handling it got let go because they were doing shady side deals. So it's probably good that it all fell apart and I was being stubborn. But yes, I did see that, and I'm all about that, because there's a lot of times that it's gut-wrenching when you're buying something for 200, the seller's actually getting 150, and you have 50,000 going to this person who's never seen the house. I get it. They're doing some of the legwork, but I think that gets, when I've done the wholesale deals, I've always worked out like a flat rate. Like, if we close this, you're getting 5,000. It's never been like these crazy $50,000, $100,000 spreads, which I know some wholesalers get. And I'm sure I'm getting hate right now underneath my page. And I'm not dissing wholesalers, but I do think that they complicate deals. And I do not like, I can tell you, I lost a deal last year to a wholesaler who lied to the seller. And I was honest with her, and she's like, wait a minute, he's saying one thing, you're saying another. And then I went back to the wholesaler and I'm like, what did you say? And he's like, oh, I said I was your partner. I'm like, you're not my partner. You're getting a flat rate from me for selling this. So I have been one of those that I want to be able to do business and not have to lie or make up stuff to get it over the finish line. And I understand that happens sometimes in the wholesaling world. And I'm not going to diss any wholesalers, but I think that was a good move in North Carolina. I'm curious how it will shift and change the wholesalers that are working in North Carolina, to see how they're going to skirt around what they're trying to change.
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of friends that are wholesalers, but, I do think there are people that take advantage of the public, and, the public safety and making sure that they are not being taken advantage of is key. And there should be some sort of process, to protect. But yeah, it's been interesting to see, I have, like I said, I get wholesaler inundated every single day, right? As I'm sure you do. It's like, hey, we have these properties. Do you have these properties? Just like we have the wholesalers that call agents, like, do you have anything coming on the market, right? There's a place for everyone in real estate, but you get so many middlemen in the process. I've had wholesalers that show me something another wholesaler sent me 2 hours before, right?
With a $5,000 markup. They're like, hey, did you see this?
Exactly, right? And I'm like,
yeah, I get that too.
I mean, and at what point, prices are already high, home affordability is an all-time low, and we have more and more of that. So
agreed.
It'll be interesting to see.
And then I get inundated like 87 times a day for the 22 that I own. They're like, hey, do you want to sell this? Do you want to sell this? Do you want to sell this? And yeah, it's a cycle. I have like 3 houses that I get harassed on like at least 5 times a week.
Yeah.
So
awesome. We're well over 400 viewers right now, so please join in the chat and ask any questions to Tom and Farah. Just jump into the chat. It would be awesome to get more lively here.
400 viewers?
How do you see?
411 right now between YouTube and Twitter, and maybe some on, probably nobody watching on Twitch or Kick.
You never know. I knew someone who built this whole brand off of Twitch. Are you not popular over there, Dave?
No, I don't. I just whenever I go live, I just click on Twitch as well as simulcast it there, and I don't spend any time on Twitch other than that. So it's all Twitter and YouTube for me, really. We've talked a lot about Arizona and Ohio, and I did not know we were going to go to North Carolina. Shout out to my buddies down there in North Carolina, Joseph and Tom, Joseph Hadaway and Savings Captain Tom, and Charter Outdoor Finance there in North Carolina. But Texas, Tom, you've also, let's jump over to Texas because you've got a whole lot going on there as well, right?
So I have 8 rentals that I self-manage here, and I'll tell you.
So you're in Texas right now. You're in Dallas.
I'm sitting in Dallas right now. Yes, in my forever home, which I'm spending money in my backyard right now to make it my forever home.
Nice.
But I kind of have not been buying a lot in Texas for the last couple of years. I did buy one last fall because the numbers don't make sense. Like if they don't make sense, there's no reason to continue. So I've looked at some non-traditional things. I've looked at some things outside of Dallas. I can still make the numbers work in Ohio. It's just not as easy in Texas. And I'm going to share a story of my adventure from the day because this is how my day started. I have one property that I've owned for 12 years here. And the tenant is one of those that is like a fantastic on time. He's been in there for 7 years and never complains. But when something goes wrong, he's the loudest person and will be loud until it's fixed. So something has crawled into the house and died, and we started tearing out walls yesterday to try and find the source. And this is a townhouse, so the source is actually not in our unit, it's attached to our unit. But I'm just gonna say this, and this is part of being a landlord. I had to spend 45 minutes listening about the stench, and then I gave him 100 different options, and he didn't like any of my options on how we could fix this. I offered to take over an ozone machine. I offered to I'm like, hey, I have a window unit. We could put that in. That's going to cycle the air in and out. And the outcome after that 45 minutes was he was going to leave on the bath fan to see if that would cycle anything out. There's times that stuff is out of your control and tenants just need to be listened to. And I can tell you, after sitting there with him for 45 minutes, 1, I was exhausted. I felt like I wanted to go back to bed and just be buttoned up. But 2, I think that's the same with the angry trolls on Twitter. Sometimes they just need to voice their concern. And even though I don't acknowledge it, hopefully it's working out some of the anger. We have not found the source, or we know where the source is, but it is not remedied yet in my unit. So my tenant is not happy, and I'm hoping tomorrow. We even have shown them where it is in the other unit, so they just need to get up there and take care of it for us. So landlording, these are things that are realities that don't get shared on social media. So. Right. Things die in walls sometimes. They ran in through flashing that was missing by the chimney on the other townhouse's side. And unfortunately, and this is one of my originals from 12 years ago, when you buy and you're attached to someone else, you're also at the mercy of the person next door to you, if they're a clean person, if they're a dirty person. I'm not dissing anyone who's next to me, but I'm just saying that there is it hasn't been taken care of yet. That's what I'll say.
But there's a lot going on.
I lucked out in the neighbor department, so I can appreciate that sentiment.
And that's why I say this is my forever home. We like our neighbors here, and I have sold houses that I could not stand the neighbors. And even in Ohio, I'll go and knock on neighbors' doors when I buy something, and I'm like, hey, if my tenants are being assholes, or I'm sorry if I can't say that on YouTube.
That's fine.
I'll give them a business card, or I'll send them I got a great deal because I sent a guy a Red Lobster $25 gift card, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna sell mine, you want it? And I'm like, yeah. And that came from that, or passing movie. And same with I struggled to find an electrician, and I had an electrician living next to me at one of the houses, and I'm like, dude, I've called 100 people. I know that you don't live next to me anymore, but are you still an electrician? He's like, yeah. And I'm like, do you think you could look at this? I've tried 18 places and they're giving me 3-month waits. And then he's like, I'll see what I can do. And then the next day he's like, it's done. You owe me $400, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, you're amazing. So I think this all circles back to networking, but talk to your neighbors, and hopefully they can be a good ally for you, and keep an eye on the place.
That's an important point when you're a landlord, right? Get to know the people that own the house next door and say, listen, here I am. If you need anything, let me know. Like, I honestly, that's something that's not talked about ever, or nobody ever posted about that.
I've posted about neighbors can make or break the deal. If you have a terrible neighbor next to you and their yard is trashed, it doesn't matter how much you spend at your house. That's going to deter everyone. And I had one of those at one point, and I sold it right at what I had into it just to get out of it. But yeah, neighbors can make or break deals, and you do not want to be next to the neighbor that's cooking meth or, any of those crazy stories we've had, because it's just you can't out design a meth cooker next to your house.
Also, on the neighbors in the neighborhood, drive by at different hours too, right? What seems 100%. Like a great neighborhood at 11 a.m. might be less so, at 9 p.m. So,
I tell people that all the time. I'm like, drive by after work, see what the cars are, see what's going. Are people hanging out outside? Is it going to be a noise issue for So whenever I'm renting, I tell people that too. I'm like, if they're on the line, I don't want to move someone into my house if they're not going to be comfortable there. So I want you to. Okay, I'm not trying to hide anything.
While we're talking about neighbors, I gotta throw this out there. So, like I said, my place is about 500,000 Canadian dollars, give or take.
But you got a deal on it, I remember, didn't you, Dave?
Yeah, I did. I got it for 409 back in 2021. So I've been here 3 years now. My neighbors next door, great people. Guess how much they paid for their house?
How much?
A lot.
$39,000.
Oh, how long have they been there?
1976, I think they said they moved in, or 74, like in the 70s, right? So obviously their house is well paid off, and they've been there for almost 50 years now. And like, can you imagine buying a place for 39,000 or whatever? Right?
I have a lady that's trying to sell her house to me right now, and when we looked it up, she bought it in 1972 for $17,000, and she's at 350 on it right now, and that's a bargain for the house where it's at. Yeah. But yeah, she bought it in 72 for 17,000.
Well, and my next door neighbors, they would be like, yeah, sure, we could sell our place right now for. Their place is probably a little bit nicer than mine. Their yard's a little bit better than mine. They could probably sell it for maybe 550, 600. But it's like, well, then what do? You have to buy another place for 6, 7, 800. And they're like, they're old, they're retired, they're happy, their house is paid for. Why would they move? They're just stay there, right?
For sure.
I remember, gosh, this was like close to 20 years ago. Around ASU, I would always see you could buy these houses for the same as your rent, and the houses at the time were like 180, 200,000, and now that same house is like 800,000. I'm always like, man, I think I was the only person. I told you this before, Dave. I feel like I was the only person that couldn't get a ninja loan in 2004, 2005. So 18-year-old me tried though.
I got the same thing 20 years ago in Vancouver, where I was looking at condos that were 180 grand, and it's like, wow, 180 grand. And now that same condo in Vancouver is probably, similar to what you're talking about, easily worth 800 grand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember my 2005 loan that I got. I was signing the application at the closing table. I was like looking at it as I was signing, and I'm like, they just filled it in with a bunch of randomness. And I'm just signing. I had no business buying that house. This was the second one that I bought, and it was a money pit for me all 10 years that I owned it. And when I sold it in 2015, I had to write a check at the closing table, but I was excited because it was a money pit that was now not in my life. But yeah, I got one of those loans, and and then I went and bought something in 2009, and it was like night and day. I'm like, what are you talking about? Why do you need all this? Like, I've bought two and they needed none of it. Yeah. So yeah, those loans weren't great. I mean, I get it, but I wish I wouldn't have gotten that second one, because I had no business buying that, and I would have avoided some heartache over the years.
Farah, tell us about all of that wonderful stuff behind you there. Give a shout out to your company.
Oh yeah, so real estate helped my daughter and I using the money from real estate.
Your younger sister, because no one believes she's your daughter. I definitely don't.
My college graduate. I'm so proud of her. But anyways, we started this company a few years ago now called the Molecules Company. So we started with supplements, and then we've expanded into wellness teas. Basically, I like the benefits of supplements, but we hate taking pills. And I looked on Amazon, looked on Google, couldn't find anything that just didn't have a bunch of junk in it, that wasn't a pill. And she was like, "Why don't we make our own?" And that's how we started it. So we started with a third-party pharmaceutical manufacturer. Now we are an FDA-registered manufacturing and packaging facility within our company. So we vertically integrated, bought the machinery, went through that whole process, and it's been a fun learning experience.
So
do you have your own plant now, like your own facility?
We have like our own machines. So I wrote a dissertation, I got a PhD, and I'm out here with a wrench, like getting greasy with the machines, making sure the hairnet and everything on, all FDA. Yeah.
Wow.
It's not always pretty, but we get it done.
And what is the supplement? So you're not taking a pill. So what is it?
So we have 6 different products now. We've launched our 6. Our first one has hyaluronic acid, magnesium, vitamin B6, ginger, and pineapple, and it's like a 2-ounce shooter.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we do single serve packets of collagen. We do like a multi-peptide collagen, and there's no additives, no fillers. We do a premium Japanese matcha blended with that collagen. And really, like, what sets us apart is, like, I take all the products, my family members take all the products. So, like, we make sure it's the highest quality. There's none of that junk, no added sugars. And it's just really easy to use. Like, this is the single serve packets. We have one called the R&R tea, and it's got magnesium, arnica, holy basil, which is an adaptogen, peppermint spearmint, and L-tryptophan. And you put it in a tea bag. So it's just like a traditional tea. So that's what we started.
That's amazing. I love it.
And you do like a lot of farmers markets and just selling.
So we do great at like pop-up shops and farmers markets. We are busy, like a 6-hour farmers market. We're selling 1 unit like every 3 to 4 minutes. So we were like moving for those 6 hours, but we always love it. And it's great to meet, our customers. And, when we started this company, we were kind of our target market, right? It was for us. And it's been interesting to see, like, we have this spice of life tea, and, we would think it'd be one demographic, and you have all sorts of people buying it, from, gosh, one time we had like this I'm going to put her like early 20s college girl. She showed up with her boyfriend. She's like, yes, we ran out, and I wanted to buy more. And so she's like, I'm so happy you're here, to people 60 plus buying the same product and loving it too. So it's really cool, that we have such a large audience. Yeah.
That is awesome.
And so you sell primarily online. I'm sorry, I do not have the link in the description.
Yeah, no,
right now, but if you watch the replay, I will get that link in the description for the website.
Themolecules.com. So we hit a sales. So we started as themolecules.co. It still works, but we hit a sales goal and we bought the .com. So themolecules.com.
Nice. And then you have some retail distribution as well.
So we started white labeling for other companies, and that's what we started doing in April. And that's gone really well. It's kept us busy. And then we are looking at getting into some med spas and some kind of local health grocers too.
Awesome. That's so amazing.
Slow and steady for the growth, but
your younger sister can.
Yeah, she was in business school. No better way to learn about business than by doing one. So.
Tom, she's actually her daughter, but Farah does not look old enough to have a daughter that's in college or graduated from college.
Yeah.
So I always kind of tease her that she's her younger sister.
So.
That's fantastic.
Tom, I'm going to bring this back to you. Sorry, go ahead.
Well,
Tom.
I was going to say that's way more exciting. I sold bras on eBay to buy real estate, so that sounds way more fun. and way more rewarding, because I'm gonna tell you, my fingers were like I had to Sharpie and peel all the clearance stickers off the bras. They were like numb by the time we got rid of all those bras. But that is way more creative than flipping bras. And I'm actually in my eBay room right now, because I still do eBay as a passion now. And it's really nice when you have a really expensive month and you have a few $1,000 coming in from eBay. So that's the good of it. But you created a fantastic product. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like it's doing really well for you. And like I said, I will get that link into the description. So if you're watching the replay, it will be there. Tom, I want to circle back to you simply because I know you worked in movie theaters for several years. And these past 2-3 days with the meme stocks making a roaring comeback, GameStop and AMC, any thoughts there?
So working in a movie theater for 15 years, I have full knowledge of our competition, which I didn't work for AMC.
Okay.
But I know that they were a mess when I was there, and I know that it's just, at this point, it's
financially, you look at both of these companies, you should not be investing in them.
So,
but
and I haven't.
Roaring Kitty goes and tweets for 3 days, and they skyrocket, right? So,
and I saw Investment Cage kept posting about them dropping off today, and I've never been a get rich quick. I've always been building something. So my thoughts are, if you're making money off it, more power to you. It's not something that I'm interested in, because I have the knowledge of that company, and I had no desire to go work for them, and I had no desire to invest in them, and that's where I'm at with that.
Fair enough. I would tend to agree that I'm not into that roller coaster ride of the meme stocks. Hats off to anybody that has made a boatload of money. Good for them, and I guess I'll just leave it at that. Farah, any thoughts on the meme stocks? Just because it's kind of been a fun 3 days there on Twitter.
Yeah, no, I mean, if it works for them, that's great, but I'm not touching it.
Then you hear these horror stories of people who put their whole life savings into this stock, and then they lose it all. So if it works,
because they FOMO into it, buy it at the high, and then all of a sudden it like
plunges. So that's why I'm not a fan, and that's why I will not jump in on that hype. But I do own some Bitcoin, I'll say that, because I get that comment 100 times a day under there, and it's not. I don't have it because of the comment. I did just put some crypto into my portfolio over the last couple of years.
Yeah, I have a little tiny small portion of Bitcoin and probably too many other cryptos, but that's for another story. I see we're already approaching an hour. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. Absolutely love having both of you on here. I'm kind of guessing, obviously, I'm sure you two know each other from Twitter, but have you ever had a chance to, probably never had a chance to talk before, right? Like this face-to-face or online face-to-face?
No, I see your tweets, but this is the first time. Love to hear more stories.
My story, I could tell a story for, some of my stories are absolutely wild. People are like, you're selling bras to buy real estate. And I'm like, I am. And they're like, prove it. And I'm like showing them the pictures of the truck of bras.
You're like, here's 100,000 bras that I sold for $2 each.
Here's this. So very nice. Thank you for having us today, Dave. This was a treat to chat.
Yeah, I appreciate you both coming on.
I like the diversity.
I love that
we're all in
like,
markets.
I know that you guys have seen each other on Twitter, but now that I gave you I always loved making the connection, having people make the connection, right? And like bringing people together. And I knew it was going to be a great conversation with the real estate of Farah having the real estate agent experience and Tom having the real estate investing experience. And we're just talking back and forth about real estate in these different markets around the US. And obviously I've pitched in a few thoughts of what's going on here in Canada. So yeah, I truly appreciate both of you coming on and spending time with me here on the Passive Income Podcast live.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. And with that said, we will end it here. If you're still watching, if you're here, please, we're well over 500 people watching right now too. So
wow.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everyone for joining us. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit subscribe. If you're watching on any other platform, hit the follow button. And be sure to follow Dr. Farah Sutton and at the Frugal Gay 11 on Twitter, I believe it is.
Yes.
Awesome. Thanks again, guys. And definitely want to have you guys back again sometime. And we'll be sure to make that happen.